Welcome to Bit by Bit's second episode. If you're joining us now after listening to episode 1, then thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for joining us again. If you're new to the show, I'd suggest you go back and listen to episode 1, as things will make a lot more sense after that. Joining us today, for the second time, is our guest, Kerim. We sat down a few days after recording the first show. I forgot to press the record button at the beginning, so the first 5 or 10 minutes is missing. But don't worry, you should be able to jump in just fine.
What should we talk about? What were you saying? Bitcoin as a living organism?
The more I explain it, the more I think, what can kill it and who controls it and how does it work? And basically no one controls it. It's something that's come from nothing, and now no matter what anyone does, it just, every 10 minutes another block comes out, everyone reaches consensus, there's all these different nodes that all communicate with each other, and it just does its thing. Everything that's happening politically, everything that's happening in the rest of the world, it just gets on, it does its thing uninterrupted, and it's been uninterrupted since the day it was born.
In terms of being alive, I think there's a specific category that we teach at school, which is Mrs. Gren. I don't know if you remember.
Right. I do weirdly, sort of vaguely, but I can't remember what it is.
So it's movement, respiration,
right,
sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition.
Okay.
Now, some of those are explicitly linked to biological things. So it doesn't need to respire. It doesn't need... Well, it does, because it needs energy. It moves, for sure. Like Bitcoin moves around the world. It's sensitive. It definitely grows. I suppose in a way it reproduces.
It creates more and more nodes and it spits out more of itself.
But it comes to a point where it stops
producing itself. It will stop producing more Bitcoin at a certain point.
Yeah, the mining ends. What date is that?
2140 roughly.
Wow.
It can vary slightly because of the adjustments, but like roughly it'll be that.
Growth, reproduction, excretion. Does it produce any waste?
It uses energy to
okay.
secure itself.
Nutrition.
And actually it's more waste than that, because miners tend to become obsolete after like 6 months to a year. The actual machines that people use, just because the technology is advancing very, very quickly. So that all becomes useless. A lot of businesses are born because of it and only because of it, and then they end up dying as it changes or they miscalculate. So I suppose there is an argument for that, yeah.
I don't know. I think in terms of like, if we were going to draw a parallel to something, it seems more like it's like the weather, you know? Like it goes on regardless of what we do.
I know what you mean, actually.
Sometimes it blows in our favour and sometimes not so much.
Yeah. It's just a weird thought I had. Not that it really matters if it's living or not, but it's sort of, sometimes it does feel like that.
I think we could get to a point where like the blockchain is almost like an autonomous creature in a way that it would do things. You know, the blockchain technology being automated and things just happening on time, on point. That would be cool.
It's going to be a weird world, but it's only as good as the information we put in. You know, with the blockchain, it will record truth, will record what you put on there. But if you put on something that's not true, then it just records a lie. And that's the problem with a lot of these other blockchains, because it's only as good as the information put in. The only reason we can find out if information is good or not is because of the specific way that Bitcoin's been set up, that we can very, very cheaply and very, very easily work out if someone's lying. But actually to produce the lie is really expensive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because to produce the lie, you must have a lot of hashing powers. To find a lie, cheap. To produce a lie, expensive.
I'll be honest, I don't understand the mathematics behind it. The basics of Bitcoin. Like, it's this kind of, there's a puzzle that you have to solve.
Yeah.
And like everyone on the network is trying to solve it, and then someone will solve it first, and they'll send out that signal and go, I think this is the solution, and everyone will vote and everyone will reach consensus on that solution, and then that'll be done.
Kind of, yeah.
That's what I've read, but like I'm kind of like some of those higher level physics ideas where I'm spouting something off, I'm repeating something, but I don't understand it. I kind of know what those words mean, and it means something to me, but it doesn't mean as much as it could.
I think the reason for that is even someone like me who's obsessive, I live, eat, sleep, breathe this stuff all day, every day, 7 days a week. From the day pretty much that I started learning about it, there's not been one day that not even when I'm like sick as a dog in bed, I'll still be learning about this stuff. And I still don't understand it.
It's true. Like, you know a freakish amount about Bitcoin.
Maybe compared to the average person, but honestly, there's a lot I don't understand.
And is that just the technical aspects, though?
Yeah, because this is why I think there's a lot of analogies, and this is why I don't think anyone fully understands it, because
there's some cryptographic geeks. I mean, I was in Westfield
they might understand
yesterday,
that bit.
and I saw the queue for people to go into the new Pokemon Center. There were people in that queue who knew everything there was to know
about Pokemon,
about Cryptomon.
Cryptomon.
No, but yeah, no, like the super geeky people. There are super geeky people that do genuinely understand. They speak code.
Yes,
and they legit understand.
They understand that aspect, but
then they don't understand.
So someone who's a computer scientist who's of a very, very high level will be able to read the code and understand the code. It doesn't mean that they understand the economic side of it, and it doesn't mean that they understand what the social impact is going to be, and it doesn't mean that they understand the mathematics, and it doesn't mean that they understand all the other parts that go into this. So for this thing to survive and to thrive, geopolitics plays into it quite a lot, and there's lots of other parts that you have to understand. So where I understand the economic side of it, I understand like the social side of it quite well, because I can see why this is going to become more useful to more people, and then therefore why it's going to become more of a used asset, and then that means that because of that the price is going to go up. So I understand that side pretty well. When it comes to the computer science side, although I've been teaching myself code and I've got to a very, very basic standard with it, I can't dig into all the code and fully go and fully understand it, because I'm not a computer scientist. So we have to kind of create these stories and these ways to explain it to people, because to say no one understands it fully is probably wrong, but there's 20 people in the world who can understand all aspects of it really, really well.
Well, here's my thing. I understand it well enough to ask a specific question, and I think that's important. Is, when we vote on this, like your computer is connected to the blockchain network, and you're a miner, and then you're voting on the algorithm. Is that this is my, this is for you to take away and go away and try and research. Mm-hmm. Is that one specific algorithm for that 10-minute block? Or are there a whole bunch of different problems that get voted on? Because surely in one 10-minute block, there must be millions of transactions.
They're stuffed in. So you can do, I think at the moment we can do, it's somewhere between like 4 and 7 transactions per second on the Bitcoin network.
Oh, see, maybe I'm misunderstanding something then, because I often when I do transactions, I wait for them to go free, and it says, that will happen within 10 minutes. It will take 10 minutes, one block. So
one block's on average 10 minutes. It's on average, though. Yeah. It's not exactly.
Yeah, it says, okay, so it says about 10 minutes. So I press send, and that money just kind of goes pending for 10, 15, maybe even up to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I still don't get the confirmation until it's, TX'd. And then I can see the actual full-on confirmation number, which I can then see.
Yeah, and so you've done that, and you've got one confirmation. The more confirmations you have, the more secure it is, the harder it is to ever change it.
The more it is in the past?
Yeah, so the further it is in the past, and the more transactions that have been built on top of it. We think of it like a chain. So you've had the first piece of a chain, and then now there's another piece that's linked, and now there's another piece. By about 6 confirmations. So
what do you mean? So you press send, but then you wait 6 confirmations before it's there?
No, not that it's there, just that that nobody has taken control of the network. Because the miners, if they wanted to cause serious problems and they wanted to somehow when I'm saying this, it's not like an easy thing to do. I'm talking this would have to be governments colluding to do this sort of stuff. But what they could do is put fake transactions in, or transactions that double spend, basically. So if you want to be really secure, you'd wait 6 confirmations or more. But this is something where I'm talking about moving. This is like, interbank settlement or huge money. You just wait because, well, what's an hour?
I don't understand what you mean by wait, because surely once you send it, it's sent. But you'll just wait. When you say waiting, you just say the longer after that money has been sent, the more secure that transaction is. But surely it's gone from wallet to wallet.
It's not that. So when you're sending a transaction, you're not sending a physical coin to.
We should point. There's a lot of weird noises in the background.
Yeah.
The washing machine's just finished its spin cycle, and it probably makes some bleeps. I have 2 dogs. One is snoring away. The other,
she's having a lovely sleep.
He's picking up his chew toys and dancing around with it. So you can hear him dancing around on the car with his chew, scratching away there. Lost my train of thought. So it's just about because it's a digital transaction and there is always a risk of some kind of hacking or collusion. The more confirmations that have been built on top of it, the more secure it is.
Yeah. So like, I send you a Bitcoin transaction now, and what's really happening is I'm transferring my ownership over to you. And if you think of it like an Excel spreadsheet, I'm just saying, okay, this is 100 million Satoshis. I'm sending that over to you to make sure that I'm not double spending it, and to make sure that I actually have ownership of it. All the nodes on the network must agree. So they'll say, well, the state of the blockchain, or the state of things was that I had ownership of it. They're confirming that I had ownership of it, because otherwise I shouldn't be able to send it to you. And they're then confirming that you now have ownership of it, and that transaction is valid. And the miners, they are confirming that this is correct. So if I'm sending you 50 quid or something like that, I'll just send it. I'm not like, it's fine.
Yeah.
The likelihood of someone actually rewriting anything anyway is so small, because it's so expensive to do it. And as soon as they do it, all the other nodes on the network are going to work out that they've done it anyway. And then they just will say, well, no, we don't accept.
Yeah, right.
So that's why, to this day.
So if, in that case, if someone in the future somehow manages to violate the block, all those transactions would be rejected, and anyone's coin that they tried to send wouldn't have been sent. Would the money come back, or would the money just be...
The likelihood of it happening...
I get that, yeah. It's disclaimer. This is like... But this, I mean, maybe
you're talking
not...
about hundreds of millions of pounds or billions of pounds to rewrite one transaction. And then once you've rewritten it, you would have to continuously build on the chain that is not truthful and continue to expend energy forever. And
there's so many other people on the network
who will all say, nah, it's not correct. Right. No. And then they won't, so it won't go through.
So James Bond style story.
Yeah.
You've got a villain who creates the first quantum computer that has the kind of hacking power, like processing power to actually.
Well, then we're done.
This.
We're finished.
So that's that. I've seen that on maybe science magazines. I think it was New Scientist. Like, will quantum computing kill Bitcoin?
Well, that's see, this is quite a big question. Like, if tomorrow there's a quantum computer that can do what people are saying they will be able to do, which is crack all encryption.
I mean, Bitcoin's the least of our worries.
It's the least of our. This is exactly It is the least of our worries, because
launch codes, nuclear weapons.
Yeah, every single bank, every single bit of data, every messaging app, every email.
Yeah.
Airport security, nuclear launch code, like everything's done. So it doesn't mean it's not possible. And the people
it's not probable.
It's not probable. At some point it will happen. But we're already aware that this is something that's going to come at some point. And they're already making it so that we could have quantum safe.
Wow, really? That's already in development?
It's been in development for a couple of years now. Because the people who are developing on top of this, they're at the bleeding edge. They are the top cryptographers.
So they're deep snoring.
Mathematicians.
Give her a little tap so she moves. And like try and just adjust her position, move her head, tip her around a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so they're aware. It wouldn't necessarily be an issue, but it's not something to take to. It's the same sort of thing. Both of these things, someone taking control of the network, very, very, very hard, very unlikely, and it's not in their incentive to do it. So the only person who would do it would be, in my opinion anyway, would be colluding governments who want to shut it down.
Or like Lex Luthor.
Or like Lex Luthor. But they've got to be really, really deep pockets.
Elon Musk,
maybe someone with that sort of wealth could conceive of it, but then they've got to buy all the equipment. So they've got to actually get their hands on mining equipment.
And they've got to do it repeatedly. They can't just do it once.
No, they've got to continuously just throw money in and continue to lose money forever. And they've got to buy the equipment, which is very expensive and it's hard to get hold of. So if someone suddenly comes on the market and says, oh, well, I want enough power to take 51% of this network, it's going to be very obvious for people that like, who's this big buyer? That's one thing. And secondly, if they did manage to hack it, or not hack it, if they managed to rewrite history and continue to do that, we'd just fork the chain and we'd all just run on a different chain.
Oh, wow.
It's like a timeline. So
Back to the Future 2.
Yeah. Yeah. So you would just say, we'll hard fork it. We will now have our version of Bitcoin. You continue to run that chain, which will just run into the ground because they'll eventually run out of money and no one was going to be using it anyway. And we just carry on with the previous state. So all they will have achieved is spend billions of dollars, buy a load of equipment, which is now useless because you can't use it to do anything else. It's application specific. All you can do is just mine Bitcoin. And now there's no Bitcoin because you've destroyed it.
Changed over to Monero or something like that as well. That's another option.
And so the way that it's set up, if they just bought the equipment and just mined properly and did the job properly as they're supposed to and actually made the network stronger, they'd earn money rather than lose money. So the incentives are set up in such a way that you're always better off playing by the rules.
Yeah. You can swim upstream, but it's going to be a lot harder. You're better off swimming, a big fish swimming downstream.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, I mean, it doesn't bother me too much. It doesn't, anything's possible. Yeah. We could get hit by a meteor tomorrow. Yeah. That's actually more likely, as far as I see it, that's more likely. And then we're all dead and Bitcoin doesn't matter anyway. No. So anything's possible.
We've got so many things that are much more, I mean, let's be honest, the financial system that we have in place with fiat money is much more vulnerable to interfering by rogue governments. They're much more likely to be able to fiddle with our fiat money.
Well, they already have.
Yeah.
It already is.
Yeah. Like we see double dip recessions and, like financial crashes are much, much easier to engineer than they would be, from what you're saying, to disrupt the Bitcoin network.
The only way that I see is if the big institutions come in and they rehypothecate, and if people are stupid enough to allow that to happen, we could be in trouble. So like currently in the financial system, what we have now is you'll have, say, bank or whoever it is, they have gold and they have that in a vault. What they'll then do is use that as collateral to lend money, but they don't just lend it once, they lend it 10 times. So like Bitcoin is an asset and everything else is debt. So it's something that they would, if they were to take control of it and everyone leaves their money on Coinbase or everyone leaves their money with these institutions, unless you have control of your private key, you can't guarantee that you own that Bitcoin. If you allow someone else control of it and they just loan on top and loan on top and loan on top, and then someone else...
he's just got me. The dog is trying to take him out all the equipment. Dog is trying to interfere with the network.
He's taking down the network. That's it. I actually hadn't even thought of that. What if George gets involved and he somehow manages to take this thing down?
He's just trying to get to his bed and he takes down the entire Bitcoin network. Billions and billions of dollars. Just wanted to go sleep. So like that's I mean, it's an interesting, like it's interesting that people are actually thinking about these things, hypothesizing them, and then trying to come up with solutions beforehand, which is something that's not really happening with fiat money anyway. So despite all that whole conversation, it still sounds safer being in Bitcoin.
For me anyway, I think it's so much safer. But to say it's impossible to take it down is just a bit of a stupid thing to say. As much as really in my head, I do think it's very unlikely. I'll never say impossible, because anything's possible. And I think
it's just not probable.
It's not probable, but that's my biggest fear, is that institutions come in, people can't be bothered to hold their own private keys, they can't be bothered to run their own full nodes, and they just trust. The whole reason this is built is to not trust third parties.
Take it, decentralize it.
To decentralize
someone
it.
Centralizes Bitcoin.
I fear that's the biggest attack that
you like. Even if they centralize it, I mean, we've talked about this a long time ago. The idea that in order to be able to centralize it, they would have to be providing a service that people are willing to sacrifice some of their assets for, which is a choice.
Like lending platforms is probably going to be a big one.
Yeah, but like at the moment, the Bitcoin interface is clunky.
Not great.
You know, whereas fiat money, like ordering stuff online with real fiat money, I don't want to use the word real, don't want to insult you. But like, it's not easy to use Bitcoin to purchase things.
No,
it is complicated and difficult. As soon as someone solves that problem, I don't think people will have an issue giving away some of their coin for it. And if they solve it and then they make it centralized as well, I mean, credit and power to them, because they're providing people with a banking service that people want. And but then they still don't own it.
It depends. If they have the private key, then they own it.
They own someone's individual Bitcoin, but they don't own the network.
No.
And like, people, if they want to not be lazy, can still run their own.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really, really smart people building software and building applications to make this easier for people, and to make it so that you'd have to be really lazy and really stupid to not hold your own private keys. But there are really lazy and really stupid people. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to assume that this becomes mainstream, then we have to assume that there's going to be people who are going to misuse and not understand. Because by the time this goes mainstream, it's not going to be people who are really security conscious, who have issues with the financial system, who don't trust third parties. It's going to be normal people. Like the people who are involved now, really, we're a sort of a fringe, a strange group who have really strong principles, most of them anyway, understand why this is so important because of freedom of speech and all the rest of it. But when it goes mainstream, people aren't going to really remember why it's here. And if enough of them... She's so loud. It's the smallest dog as well.
Because she's... I can't say it. Brachiocephalic?
She's what?
Small nose.
A small snout.
Yeah.
She can come up with me here if she wants.
And bless George for sleeping next to her every night.
Yeah.
She snores like a monster. Yeah.
She's nice though.
She's like a 10-pound dog. Like nothing. It snores like a 180-pound man. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things though. It's people are willing to give up certain things for convenience. You know, like
it's a balance.
We always talk about privacy. It's something that people sacrifice now. You either get services like Google for free, but as you give away part of your data in penance for that, or you hit something with a paywall like Netflix, where you do pay, but they don't collect your data and use it against.
They do collect your data though.
They don't sell it to other people.
Well, you don't know that. This is the thing. And even if they don't sell it, they must store it. And if they must store it, it will get hacked. You just look at like Equifax and all these enormous companies who get hacked. Facebook the other day. It was something like 150 or 180 million users got their data hacked like a couple of months ago from Facebook. You know, this is a technology company and they're getting hacked. And even if they're not getting hacked, they're selling your data anyway. And the reason for that is when the internet first came about, because it's new, no one's used to this stuff. If you ever tried to get someone to pay for something on the internet, they wouldn't do it for a few reasons. One, they're not used to it. Two, they were scared because everyone was scared because credit cards, and credit cards aren't built to be used on the internet. It's not secure. Really,
my account's been hacked multiple times.
And mine.
Multiple
endlessly.
times. And it always seems to be through phones. Like the bank will tell me, it's, this guy someone with an iPhone in London, is that you? No. I don't know how they get my...
The thing is, you've got the internet and then you've got 1970s banking technology just sort of plonked on top. And all this information has to be collected and then it's put into... It's like siloed, and you have these huge attack surfaces where people can just go, I can attack these servers, or I can attack where they store this data, and I can have millions of credit card details. And because we have to have know your customer and anti-money laundering and all this sort of stuff, they've got your identification, where you live, what you do as your job, what's your credit card details, what's your, all the rest of your banking stuff, age, every single bit of information that they could possibly want, that a hacker would be their dream, is just stored, and millions of them. So it's constantly getting hacked. And then we spend billions on security to try and prevent this from happening. But
we don't spend it. The banks spend
it. But we do spend it because they spend the money, and because they've spent the money, someone has to pay for it.
They charge us interest.
They charge us. Or they give us worse service, or whatever it is. There's always a cost to the customer because they can't just swallow all of it. Because we never had a secure payment method, these paywalls, it's clunky. That's why I use Amazon all the time. I can't be bothered to go on a different website. I don't know if it's real or fake. I don't know if they're actually going to send the products. Then I've got to enter all my credit and debit card details in, put in my address, and it takes like 5 minutes.
But you still trust Amazon to store your card details?
No, I don't trust them.
But you allow them to?
I have to at the moment.
Because they provide you a convenient service.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Generally, my stuff arrives. Generally, it works. I don't have to re-enter my credit card details, all the rest of it.
They do have some good security. Like if you change device and go to buy, they're like, well, you just need to re-enter your card details just for safety and security. So there are aspects of security on there.
Because of the ease of use and all the rest of it, that's what we use. But imagine if you just opened your browser, you see something you want to buy, press buy, and it's done.
That's the integration that Bitcoin can provide.
It already is. With Lightning Network, these things are being used and they work now, and it is instant. The user interface is still clunky, and there's still this weird sort of, you've got to buy the Bitcoin, then you've got to convert that onto a Lightning channel.
Well, I think that's my initial point is like, if someone, what was the word you used?
Rehypothecation.
Rehypothecation. That's a weird word because I get the rehypothesis,
right?
But then I don't know why we're giving it to the apothecary at the end of that name.
Well, that's a different thing. I mean, that's where they're lending on top of lending on top of lending.
Oh, okay.
This is where the House of Cards is. It's like
that
everyone owes someone else.
If someone is centralized, and I was saying the only way that people will allow it to be centralized is if by centralizing they provide them with a better service. Like Amazon. Amazon is a centralized shopping network where we hate supermarkets because they kill independent stores. Independent retailers are dead because of supermarkets, and Amazon is the ultimate supermarket. It's the online supermarket of everything. But we allow it and we all participate because they provide such a good service. And that's the potential with Bitcoin and rehypothecary.
Well, not with them. I mean, that's a different thing. So Amazon, if Amazon said, oh, well, we're going to take Bitcoin payments, if they decided that they would store all of that Bitcoin and keep all of that Bitcoin And then they decided that they would lend it out to people. And then those people would lend it to someone else, and those people would lend it to someone else, and those people would lend it to someone else, and no one bothered to keep their private keys, and no one had control of their own coins. Then it would be a problem. It's very, very easy. Well,
Why
not
would
very
that be a
easy.
problem, though?
Say you take an asset, that asset is a cup of coffee.
Mm.
You own that cup of coffee. That's an asset. But then if you say to someone, I'm going to lend you half a cup of coffee, and then you tell 100 other people, I'm going to lend you half a cup of coffee, half a cup of coffee, half a cup of coffee.
But surely it's breaking the double spend issue.
Because you're not using Bitcoin, you're not actually using it on the network. This is off chain now, so this is just a promise. You're going back to a certificate.
Oh right, okay. So this is what they're doing. This is basically treating Bitcoin as the backing for fiat money.
I see. Where I think Bitcoin is going to go is it will eventually just be massive, like interbank settlement rather than gold, because it's expensive to transfer. Like this is really cheap, really easy, really secure. You can guarantee that it's real if you do things properly anyway. So what I'm saying is that the only issue that I can see is, like we had with gold, the gold standard would have been fine, and even backing the notes with gold would have been fine. But it's because we got to a point where we had much more certificates for the gold than we had actually gold. If they'd have actually done things properly and just said, well, we've got X amount of gold, which means we can have X amount of dollars, and that's it, and that's done.
Print more.
But this is where the attack surfaces, as far as I can see it, is if we are stupid enough to repeat history and allow them to take full control, a vast sum of the new gold, which is Bitcoin, then they're just going to do what they did before. They're not going to grow
the banks and the financial institutions.
Yeah. So what we need to do is not. This whole thing has come about because we can't trust them, because over and over and over and over and over again we get fucked. If enough people will use the network as it's supposed to be used, I can't see a problem. But if everyone allows banks to keep control of things, even if we did this, even if we said, okay, you can hold a large sum of Bitcoin, you're a bank, you're providing a service where it's really easy to use, and I can send money to my friends in a really easy user interface, and no one else has bothered to build one, and I can loan, I can use my Bitcoin as collateral, and I can take a loan out to buy a car or do whatever, if that's what someone wants to do, which I'd never advise, but if that is what someone wants to do, then it's fine, as long as the bank says, okay, well, we'll have it so that you can check on the network, you can check that we actually have control of that Bitcoin, and that you have, say, a multi-signature account where you can draw that money and they can't send it without your permission, then they can't lend on top of lending on top of lending. They have to actually do what they've said they're going to do. And that's easy enough to build.
The whole point is that people, if it can be done for free without people taking a cut or people taking you for some profit, then I think people will start working around it. There'll be a few people that will fall for these kind of things.
Yeah. It's fine if it's a few.
But yeah, I don't think it will be an issue with like the whole, someone, also it sounds like the Bitcoin network, the people that are actually involved in developing and maintaining and sustaining this and keeping it future-proof will work on ways of actually making this.
They are already, and it is getting better by the day. It really, really is. It's so impressive. Every day that I'm reading something, I'm amazed. Things are accelerating. So, I mean, definitely it can be built, and definitely it can be built safely. It's just a case of not being too complacent and remembering what the core values of this thing are, and remembering why it's here, and remembering it's for the people. It's the whole point of this. So as long as we stick to that, we don't allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, we'll be fine.
Now, would you agree that maybe the banks will be too slow anyway? Not the banks, but the financial institutions generally will be too slow to act, and by the time that they do, they'll be too far behind to actually.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the banks are going to be smarter and quicker to move than the governments. They're the ones where I think they've missed the boat. If they'd have swooped in the first couple of years, they'd have been able to shut this thing down.
The governments.
Yeah, but they were too slow and like too arrogant, and they still don't understand it. You got all these.
They don't understand lots of things, governments.
But I mean, they really don't understand this.
I mean, let's be honest. Most people don't. Young people don't. My experience of talking to people is it's quite a middle-aged thing. Older people definitely don't understand it. Younger people definitely don't understand it. It's people in that sort of late 20s, 30s, early 40s that are going to even be aware of it. And maybe they've got some stored in it. Maybe they tried some short-term trading in it to try and make some money. Very few people are using it as a currency, though.
No, because it's not a particularly good currency, really.
No, I mean, you know, if we're completely honest, the only way use of it as a currency is for things that you probably wouldn't want to use fiat money for, because there'd be a track and a trace. I mean, let's put it this way. I know one shop where I can use Bitcoin. So that's it. I know one physical location where I can purchase. I don't know any online retailer that I use where I can use Bitcoin. I can't use it on Amazon or eBay or, you know, any other. Like, if you go on a store that has an online department, none of them offer Bitcoin transactions.
Because it doesn't really make sense for them to, and it doesn't really make sense for the person who's spending it to spend it either. Because with any money, it has to evolve. This is something that's only been around for 10 years. It was worth nothing. No one used it, and still no one understands it. So it has to go through these stages. And at the moment, it's acting more of a store of value. Really.
I think that's what most people are using it for.
It's, well, number one, speculation.
Yeah.
Number two, store of value. There are some people who are using it as a currency, but they tend to be in countries where their current monetary system is failing them badly. So somewhere where they've got massive inflation or hyperinflation. What we've got in England.
Do you know much about what's going on? Like, is it Argentina where is Bitcoin doing well in Argentina?
A fair amount of Argentinian people use it, and Venezuelans and people like that. But it tends to be those people who understand it tend to get out.
Right.
Because they tend to be the computer scientists or people who understand this stuff tend to, once they understand it, get out. So you have a brain drain, they'll go over to America or UK or wherever it is. And the people who are stuck in the country, who their money's being devalued so much, they don't necessarily know how to use it. You do have a few of them, but it's still really not used very much because you do have these fluctuations. To us, if something drops by 50% in a few months, that's massive. That would be seriously scary for us to use. For countries like that, they do that in a day anyway. Doesn't matter. To them, Bitcoin is the stable currency. And so for them, it's brilliant. But for us, because we're used to something that's pretty good, like on the face of it, the foundations are terrible. The foundations of our financial system are woeful. But at the level that we see it, we wake up tomorrow and basically a price of milk is going to be roughly the same amount and petrol is going to be roughly the same amount, and we don't see a huge amount of fluctuations. So why use Bitcoin right now when, firstly, tax implications of using it are an absolute nightmare purposefully? So you'd have to report every time you buy it, every time you sell it. If you buy your petrol with it, then the cost of it's gone up. You've got to report that on your with your tax. So that makes it unusable. And also, if you do understand it, you know that this is going for all or nothing. This is going for global reserve currency or nothing, really. That's where we're going. So why would you use it to buy something when you're thinking, well, this is probably going to be 100x from here? So that's why it's not really used as money, most sort of first world countries. And it's only once it gets stable that it's going to be used. And it's only going to be stable when it's much bigger than it is now, because we are $150 billion, the whole of Bitcoin. We're like,
what economy would that be equivalent to?
It would be in like the bottom 7 or 8 countries.
Okay.
Like it's
going to be some country in Central Africa or
yeah, a small country. I can't actually remember. I have looked at it. I think it's like 7th from the bottom or something like that at the moment.
So
it's small.
Yeah,
it's really small. So, and that's why we see these huge fluctuations, because it doesn't take a lot to move these markets up or down. And until we get to, well, if you just look at, so say gold was the base money. Now we've gone to a point where like there's much more money than there is gold, like a lot more. So gold, the value of all gold in the world, or the market cap of all gold, is like, it's roughly 8 trillion. Roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly 8 trillion. And we've got $250 trillion of debt currently in the world, but there's 8 trillion value of gold, but we're only 150 billion. So if we want to just match the market cap of gold, I'd have to do the maths on it, but we'd be at like 500,000 a Bitcoin, or roughly that sort of money if we just take gold. So my prediction is that we'll take gold, and we'll also take, just logically, we'll take all other offshore money. So I don't know if you've seen the Panama Papers.
No.
So there's a documentary that basically goes into the Panama Papers and goes into some of the money that is kept offshore. HSBC was very much at the heart of it.
God, those guys, the biggest money launderers in the world.
It is absolutely disgusting, the things that they do, and the fines that they get are less than the money they've earned. So what sort of precedent is that? It's like me getting a parking ticket which is less than the parking that I would have paid anyway. So I'm just going to go, well, I'll just do that every single day of the week.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what happens to the banks. So my point of saying this was that the estimation of this offshore money, which is, Cayman Islands and wherever else, and it's held in shell companies, and then they just get a front man to be the front of the shell company, and they pay no tax. And this is what all the politicians and all the bankers and all the upper echelons of society do. And it's normal, but that's about 9 trillion estimated.
Whoa.
So if you just think to yourself, well, they're going to have to pay to have solicitors draw up all these contracts, to make a shell company, to make sure that they're still putting trust in these lawyers and everyone else to do their job properly, so that the tax can't ever be taken from them. They have to spend a lot of money to protect their money. With Bitcoin, you can do it basically for free, and it's much more secure, and no one can control it other than you. So if you just say, well, we take gold and we take all the dark money which is hidden offshore, well, suddenly we're at $1 million a coin with no other money. If no one else gets involved, we just take those two, it's $1 million a coin. And when we're at $1 million a coin, it will be much more stable, because when someone jumps in with another 100 billion, well, it's not really going to move the market. If that happened today, it would seriously move the market in a way that we want it to. It goes to the upside, but still, it's not very good as a currency. So I don't see it being a currency until then.
So someone stored 100 billion in value, just bought 100 billion Bitcoin.
You couldn't today.
There's not enough.
There's not enough liquidity, and most people who know about this stuff are not selling theirs either, and there's just not enough on the market. So if they tried to, though, and they just bought as much as they possibly can, I mean, we would see a huge rally.
Spike.
Massive. So I don't really see it being a currency until we're at least $1 million a coin.
So you think it's still early days?
I think this is so early. It's like this would be like investing in Apple or Amazon or one of those before they've even started.
So because a lot of people go, oh, there's Bitcoin millionaires. They're people who have earned their money on it, but that time's been and gone. But you don't agree with that. You think that time is just beginning. It's like the California gold rush hasn't actually happened on Bitcoin yet. We've had early days, prehistoric Egyptian gold, Tutankhamun. There are people that have found a shed load of gold and they've made some money on it, but we still haven't hit those peak times of gold.
I don't think we're anywhere near. In my head, $1 million's actually fairly conservative.
But for one coin? For
one coin is fairly conservative because it is a better base currency than gold. So even just we take that, that's $500,000 a coin.
And $1 million a coin, that makes it a penny a Satoshi.
Yeah.
Because 100 million Satoshis in a coin.
Yeah.
And, there's 100.
Yeah, which would then make it quite easy because it'd be like,
Yeah, it would work. I mean, yeah, because at the moment, I was trying to explain to my friends the other day, today actually, and I was like, just talk about milli, because they were like 0.0005.
Yeah.
5. I'm like, it's 5, so it's 5.5 milli coins.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Like a milli, not a millionth, but a thousandth as in millennial. A millimeter is a thousandth of a meter, and a milli coin. So, I mean, I've seen that on certain like marketplaces where you can set it to milli Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like lowercase m BTC. And that for me is great because I tend to think that 1 milli is about a fiver. I mean, it's been between £2 and £7.
Yeah, but roughly, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fiver. So, milli Bitcoins. But yeah, that idea of it being a Satoshi a penny would be amazing. But
and that's the lower end of where I think it's going.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's taking all or nothing. Either somehow this fails from some of the some of the ways that we discussed earlier, which is not impossible, but I think improbable, or slowly but surely everyone on this planet realizes that it's a better base money. It's more efficient. It's verifiable. It's all the properties that I could sit here and bang on about forever. It's a better base money, and for people who don't want to pay tax, these people who are weaseling their money away in offshore bank accounts, who are the same people who are standing up and saying how much they want to help change the world and how they're going to give their money to charity and all the rest of it. They're saying one thing, but actually they're shipping all this money offshore. For those people, a half decent engineer for an hour's work could set things up better than they're paying, I imagine, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do.
Oh, okay. So I get you. So what you're saying is take Celebrity X, Dwayne the Sock Diesel.
Johnson. He's the highest earning actor in the world last year, I think I heard.
Deservedly so. The man is a fucking genius. Like, he's the new Arnold.
He's the new Arnold.
He's the new Arnold.
He's a monster of a man.
Yeah.
I like seeing him with, what's his name? Oh, it's a really, really short comedian. They're good mates.
Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah, him and
it's
Kevin
so
Hart,
funny seeing those two together.
Well, they clearly have a really good relation. They're really good friends. There's loads of videos of them just dicking around on YouTube with
it's
each
funny.
other. But so let's say Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and he's got lots of money stored in an offshore account. You think it would be better for him to, instead of storing that money in cash in the Cayman Islands, he would be better off storing it in Bitcoin on a special USB key that he's got somewhere. And that would not only be good for him, because his money would deflate, so it'd be worth more in the future, whereas cash would be worth less due to inflation. It would also help pump up the network, because that store of value means that the network is bigger and worth more. Does it drive up scarcity if more people are storing it? And is that better?
Well, it doesn't drive. I mean, the scarcity's fixed.
No, but you said earlier, there's a certain amount of liquidity in the network. Like people have to, you're either mining coins or people are selling their stored coins. And you said how much? 9 trillion in offshore assets.
Roughly, that's what they estimate.
So it would be impossible for all those $9 trillion dollars to suddenly go to Bitcoin, because there isn't 9 trillion in liquidity.
No, it would be impossible for somebody who had $9 trillion today to just say, I want to buy 9 trillion today, because, or it wouldn't be impossible, but what would happen is, because there's not the liquidity on the exchanges, someone would put in a massive buy order and you get what's called slippage. Because there's not the liquidity there and they're trying to do such a massive order, anyone who's selling, say there's 500 Bitcoins for sale on one of the larger exchanges at any one time, well, it's just going to eat through that order book straight away. And now there's no one more selling. And now that pushes the price up. And anyone else who now wants to sell is going to be selling at a higher price. And so that continues. So they're going to, with the first bit of money, pay a lower price, then it's going to go higher, then it's going to go higher, then it's going to go higher, and they're basically forcing themselves to pay more money and make everybody else on the network earn more, or not earn more, for their coins to be worth more.
Yeah.
So if they were smart about it, they'd do it bit by bit. They do, do it bit by bit. Nice little plug there. My point really is that, say Dwayne The Rock Johnson said, right, I want to keep my money offshore. And he'll say, one of his friends will say, oh, you want to speak to my mate? He'll sort you out with an offshore bank account, blah, blah, blah. So Dwayne goes and does that. And he says, right, I've got, I don't know, a couple of 100 million. And what I want to do is make sure that no tax, it doesn't get touched. No one knows I have it. I want it offshore. I don't want to pay anything on it. They say, no problem. All we got to do is just draw up these contracts, set up this shell company. We'll set you up with this bank account, blah, blah, blah. They're going to charge him to do that. Probably quite a lot of money to do that. And then he has a few issues, which are he's going to have to continue to pay money to them to make sure that it continues to work. And he has counterparty risk, which means that if one of those banks or one of those people he's trusted either grasses him up, goes against what they've said, they have liabilities that they can't keep up with and they end up going under, then does he get his money back? Because he doesn't really control it. He's giving an IOU to someone else. So the options are, right, Dwayne, do you want to pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to have something that's fairly secure but not 100% secure, and you're trusting in about 10 different people to store your money, and that money's stored in fiat, which is going down in value? Or do you store it in Bitcoin? You have complete control of it. Rather than spending £200,000 on lawyers' fees and all the rest of it, you pay £50, and it's stored in Bitcoin, which over time tends to go up. Now, the weird thing about it is that if people just are logical and they say, well, Bitcoin's better than gold as base money, so we do that, so that's 8 trillion. Bitcoin's better as an offshore bank account than offshore bank accounts, so there's another 9 trillion. Now we're at $1 million a coin. What happens is the more people that use it and the more that value goes up, the more people are going to join. It's like a snowball effect. And what that means is that because everyone who's using fiat money, the money's being, or the liquidity is being sucked away from them like a black hole, it's all coming over to Bitcoin, they then have to print more money, which means their money devalues more.
And so as Bitcoin becomes more and more valued, fiat money becomes less and less valued.
Yeah, and what it means is the pegged rate, or the rate, at some point, say we get to £1 million a coin, okay, but say we get to 10 or 15, so it doesn't really mean anything anymore, because you'll be like, oh, well, how much is a bit? Anyway. Or how much is a pound? Well, I don't know. It's 1/100 millionth of a. Do you know what I mean? You're starting to get to a point where they're going to have to print and print and print and print, where their money's just worth nothing, and so you won't even have that.
It'd be like when you go somewhere like Turkey, when the lira, you know, what you call 1 lira is actually like 1,000 lira. Yeah. That's why it interests me so much, because there's all these weird little scenarios where it's like, well, if this happens, then it means this happens. And if that happens, it means this happens. And the knock-on effect of just those two coming across, just us taking those two bits of value, not including property, not including art, not including classic cars, not including any of the other things we store value in, it suddenly forces all of these central banks and all these governments to just print to nothing. So, would it be fair to say, because I think we discussed this in the past, that what will happen is Bitcoin will grow and it will be ignored largely by the mainstream until it is almost as big as fiat money, like you say, like that one Satoshi becomes 1 penny, and at that point there are two cars racing side by side, and Bitcoin will get faster and fiat money will get slower, and eventually there'll be a clear winner, and it will always be Bitcoin.
I think so.
It's almost set up to be that way because of the difficulties in the way that fiat money is, that it naturally devalues.
Well, it doesn't naturally devalue. It devalues because central banks
it devalues every year.
Yeah, but it's not natural. It's just the system, that the way that it's used.
That is, the system has evolved over the last 50 years. So it's been corrupted,
Yeah, so it is. It will be two cars, or at least I think it will be like two driving side by side. And to me, there is an obvious, clear winner for almost everyone on the planet. So yeah, that's why I see it going to at least those values. If you really think about it logically, it's hard to argue it, and people will, people won't start using this until the value is much bigger, and it's going to take time. It's going to feel like one day you just wake up and it's just here and it's obvious, but it's not obvious now, and it probably won't be for another 5 years, maybe even 10. We shall see. We shall see. It's all speculative. It's all guesswork.
Cool. Right, man. I think we just did an hour.
That was quite good, actually.